When I revealed my unfaithful fiancée and her accomplice in crime to the world at our wedding, she lost it. Okay, so I'll tell you all about how. As I recited my vows, my wedding abruptly ended. Thus, I met my fiancé in a group setting through ZO workers. David, one of our friends, was also my closest friend. I asked him to be my best man at the wedding because I thought it was fantastic that he got along with the girl I started seeing and eventually proposed to. When my fiancée learned, she was overjoyed and felt that it was the right decision. Her joy raised a doubt in my mind, but because she was also his buddy, I didn't give it much thought. Let's fast forward to the week prior to the nuptials. My fiancée appeared quite happy and was constantly on her phone. I thought she was just preoccupied with organizing the wedding. I didn't mind as long as it made her happy when she would pause and ask me questions about insignificant choices. But now that I know, I feel like she could have made things up to prevent me from thinking she was talking to someone else, my best man, specifically than what I actually knew. The same night we held our bachelor celebrations, which I found to be very cool. My closest friend had organized a party for me, so when he called to say he couldn't make it, I was terribly unhappy. He informed me that he had to be with his mother since she had unexpectedly ended up in the hospital. Really, I ought to have given him the benefit of the doubt, don't you think? I regret being so callous and doubting him now. All right, I was with a lot of buddies that evening. We're a busy group. We thus cleaned up properly after playing some basketball outside before going to a classy bar downtown. I hoped my fiancée thought the same of me since I was feeling like a king. It's odd because, while we were living together at the time, we chose to put off becoming close until after the wedding. It was more difficult than I had anticipated, I must say. Every night, we alternated between sleeping on the pull-out bed in the living room. My fiancée was sound sleeping in our bed when I arrived home from the party, looking like an angel who had a blast. After tucking her up, I turned to look around and saw a gleaming gold cufflink lying on the floor next to the bed. My attention was drawn to it since I only owned one set of cufflinks that differed from the one I found, and my girlfriend lacked any. That made me wonder. Could this indicate that there was another man in our bedroom? I became irritated and began massaging my neck and face. My fiancé's phone buzzed just as I was becoming anxious about it. On the nightstand, I could hear it even though it was set to vibrate. I glanced through her texts and saw something about a chat I had with my closest friend. Okay, so the last text I saw from him was at 9 p.m., 4 hours ago. She asked him to her bachelorette party. Despite the fact that that isn't generally the case, I thought as I scrolled up. However, as I viewed their previous texts, it grew worse. She informed him that because she will be with me the next day, this would be their night. She kind of taunted him by saying he might be able to have her again if he enticed her enough. Then there were the texts from several months prior, where their friendship became flirtatious from simply friends. She gave him images when he began to inquire about her figure. They even arranged to get together one day, even though I assumed she was at work. When he messaged her later to inquire if they should have done it, she answered that she was positive they should have. I went from being joyful about being married to being hurt and desiring retribution in less than 1 hour. I intended to read the 6 screenshots I grabbed of their worst texts to each other throughout the vows. Like what she did to me, it was going to be terrible. After erasing all trace of gathering those texts, I took some NyQuil to pass out. She was gone by the next morning. I understood what was actually going on, even though she left me a handwritten letter indicating she was leaving early to get her cosmetics and hair done. Imagine yourself all dolled up and looking forward to an amazing day when all of a sudden, someone calls you out in public as a cheater. What a foolproof method, huh? I was being resentful at the time. She didn't need to apologize, and I didn't miss her. I couldn't believe how much I loved her even though she was seeing someone else, so I was done with her. I worked so hard to make sure I looked wonderful, smelled amazing, and had perfectly styled hair. Even if I had some doubts about it, I told myself it was still worthwhile. I considered telling my father about my plans, but I didn't want him to dissuade me or alert others. My closest buddy texted me at that same moment to inquire if I was going to the event. He met me outside when I arrived, appearing quite professional, but I was just thinking about cufflinks. I took a slight chance and pretended to see that he was missing one, even though I wasn't really sure. I could see he was ashamed, and he was surprised. He stated it may have gotten hooked on something and he lost it someplace. In the unlikely event that I discovered a match, I requested a detailed inspection of the one he had. He was perspiring profusely and his heart was racing. I pretended to be ignorant of everything, even though it was hilarious to watch him act that way. After demonstrating the cufflink to me, what happened? That matched the one in my pocket exactly. I gave him a hard look for a few agonizing seconds at that point. I was doing my best not to strike him or yell. He inquired about my well-being, sensing that something wasn't right. Hey, I was getting married today, so everything was good, I told him, snapping out of it and plastering on a phony smile. Then I gave him a forceful backslap, which made him start to tremble. I entered the location after some mind-numbing socializing during the big procession, yet I couldn't help but feel that I would never desire a typical wedding again. Everything seemed so silly and pointless. And all those memories of how we met and our time together flashed through my head, right before my almost wife looked as beautiful as ever as she went down the aisle. I was crying because it was so incredibly unjust. It was evident to all around me that these were not joyful tears. I was inconsolable. Until the celebrant asked whether I wanted to read my vows, I was able to compose myself. I began reading communications between James and my fiancée at that point, noting the time and date of each exchange. People were certainly curious about my activities at first, but after hearing me out, they recognized these were flirtatious messages and not anything to be proud of. They began to fidget uneasily and looked around, realizing that everyone in the building was gazing at them, which made things extremely unpleasant. My spouse inquired about my activities and the content I was perusing on my phone. She ordered me to stop when I received another text, but I read those really offensive words out nevertheless. She was asking him over, because I had left the home, and he was making some explicit comments about wanting to be with her again. People began muttering and chatting among themselves as I read those texts, and my fiancée attempted to take my phone. Suddenly, my best friend and 5 of my groomsmen left. And there I was, yelling that I had videos and images of the texts they had exchanged, and that I would be happy to share them with anyone who was interested. Some people got up and left because of that. The celebrant dared to inquire if we would still be getting married, and I couldn't hold back my loud, sarcastic laughter. At the altar, my ex was now on her knees, sobbing in her white dress. Her bridesmaids stood there, stunned, with no idea what to do. Perhaps some of them witnessed her flirting with him or knew about her affair. The fact that no one hurried to comfort her was gratifying. By now I was sick of the whole charade. The whole thing was pounding in my mind. I went outdoors to see how my closest friend was doing. It turns out that those 5 guys had encircled him and were screaming and cursing at him in shock that he had betrayed me in such a way. I was simply done with it all at that point. My mind was racing, and I was sick of the entire situation. Now that I had my desired retribution, all I wanted to do was collapse into a slumber. I urged those folks to get over it and let my best man leave, explaining that there was no use in keeping him around. My almost bride emerged from the venue in a hurry, followed by her bridesmaids who were berating her and calling her derogatory things as they moved back. After running approximately 10 yards behind my best man's car, he stopped when he noticed her in the rearview mirror. They drove off when she got in. When I looked back, I noticed several of our wedding guests observing the entire event. They appeared to be receiving bereavement counseling session, giving me cuddles and guidance. They were there for me at least, even though it was strange. Furthermore, those folks were no longer her pals. They both lost the connection and support from our network of friends and relatives. Their romance didn't survive long, even though they moved out of state together in the end. After just a year of cohabitation, my ex moved back in with her disgruntled and judgmental parents. How much of a waste of time it was. She dared to ask me out again after all of this chaos, and I just called her insane. My best buddy never got in touch with me, but that's okay in all honesty. In any case, I can't be friends with him anymore. Fortunately, my family and friends supported me and kept me from losing hope or being depressed. I haven't begun dating again just yet, but I'm considering asking a nice girl out because I have my eye on her. Though it's absurd to imagine that someone will dedicate their life to me alone, my ex gave me cause for concern, so I now approach individuals cautiously. I discuss my prior experiences with them and ask them whatever I want to make sure they realize where I'm coming from. The second tale. I had been married to my wife for 10 years. As our anniversary celebration drew near, I realized how fortunate I was to have met someone with whom I could spend such a long time. We were the greatest of friends and knew everything about one another. Perhaps the reason our love was so great was because we felt our zodiac signs were soulmates. Although I was aware that her sign was connected to infidelity, I chose to believe her anyhow. We were married for 3 years and had a kid during the last 10 years. After all those years in the same profession, my wife was ready to receive her largest increase just before our summer family vacation. I had the distinct impression that I had found genuine love, and I believed she would support me no matter what. She appeared surprised and agitated by the good news the night she returned home after receiving her increase. However, her look gave me the impression that she was more concerned about something else. She managed to giggle when I questioned whether she was having problems believing in her own achievement, but I could tell she wasn't persuading me. I had a feeling there was more going on, but when I asked, she dismissed it, saying she was just pleasantly surprised. I wasn't even considering cheating at that moment. Then, just before she entered our bedroom, she made an odd comment about how blessed she was and how amazing her employer was. He is genuinely fond of her, and I was unprepared for that. She must have understood that her statement sounded odd when she said it that way. Our anniversary party occurred the next day. She received a call from her supervisor as we were preparing. She excused herself to answer the phone in her office, where she would often take notes to refer to later. She had no idea that I had crept up on them and listened in on their talk. She thanked him again for the rise at first, but then everything became very private. She expressed her gratitude to him in a whisper, calling him great and expressing her want to spend more time with him. Subsequently, she inquired about the surveillance cameras at his workplace, ensuring that they wouldn't be discovered engaging in any illicit activities or risk being fired. Everything was starting to make sense to me. I wanted to storm into the room to inform her that I had heard everything. Nevertheless, I made the decision to say something during our anniversary celebration. I had to take something that would force me to meet with her and finalize our divorce. I was very sure she had just come clean about having slept in her boss's office. I stood motionless outside the door, patiently waiting for her to open. When she noticed me standing so close and attempting to pretend like nothing was wrong, she seemed genuinely concerned. I put on a phony smile. We walked out when she asked if I was ready. She was agitated and starting a cigarette, since that's how she acts when she's anxious, and I felt like a zombie. She tried to check on me again throughout the journey, and I sensed that she wanted to know whether I had overheard her. When we got to the location, I turned to face her and said, "Let's go celebrate our 10-year marriage." I spoke in a robotic tone that was devoid of fury. She was aware that I had heard them, but she was reluctant to confront me about it. Our 7-year-old daughter was present as well, as my parents had granted us some alone time for our anniversary, while she sat inside sweltering, and I took my time to politely meet our friends and relatives. Upon seeing our daughter and all of our loved ones, my wife began to scratch and was rather uncomfortable. She said she was okay, but people began to notice her red face and gathered around her, commenting that she didn't look good. She was perspiring profusely, as was evident to everybody. This was my opportunity to make a statement. I got up and informed everyone that my employer and my wife were having an affair. Everyone was taken aback, and she ultimately passed out. Fortunately, our relatives and friends showed compassion and quickly assisted her by applying a cool cloth to her forehead and fanning her. The traditional method, I suppose. She was very embarrassed when she awoke and was unable to speak. When she eventually said she wanted to go home, I questioned which house she was referring to. She cried uncontrollably and bolted to the restroom. After expressing my gratitude to everyone for attending, I brought my daughter home. After we went to bed, my wife made a couple unsuccessful phone calls. I was already sleeping when a few more folks phoned, so I missed it all. I was glad to have learned the truth, and to have actually kicked her out. My wife was allowed to remain at the home of one of her relatives, I found out later, but it was not the only thing that would alter. I made the decision to inform their company's HR department via email about the incident. They responded to me within a week, saying they appreciated the information and that they had taken the necessary measures. I got a call from my wife after that. She began by calling me a low slime bag for destroying the professions that her boss and she had spent their entire lives pursuing. After I worked hard for 10 years for her and our kid, I branded her a low slime bag for wrecking our marriage. How could she be a mother role model for our kid and accomplish that at the same time? It wasn't until our daughter's visitation began following the divorce that she made contact with me. However, what's the deal? I've already discovered a lady who takes care of me in ways that my ex would never have thought to do, and she has her own children. But it's bittersweet since I know I wasted a lot of time putting my confidence in her. Third story, it's difficult to accept that our friendship has ended abruptly, but I suppose I should now refer to him as my ex-best buddy. Our solid tie that we cultivated over the years has suddenly crumbled to rubble. We've known one another for around 15 years, ever since high school. To me, he was like a brother, and my parents thought of him as their son. Our families were really close back then, and we basically lived at one another's houses. Together we took travels and experienced a plethora of amazing things. I was meant to be his best man at his wedding, and he was my best man at mine. Together we've experienced a great deal, supporting one another through difficult times and engaging in thoughtful discussions about life, love, and everything else. He was a real friend who was always there for me in times of need and who gave me wise counsel. He was such an important part of my life that it's difficult to express how much it hurts to lose him. It may hurt as much to lose him as it does to lose my wife. Losing someone who I always looked up to and who I truly considered a friend is a devastating blow. Only to learn that this was how he had deceived me. Although we've been dating for 7 years, my wife and I have been married for over 5 years. I vividly recall our first meeting day. Love was felt right away. Her contagious laugh and piercing blue eyes made her utterly gorgeous. I felt she was out of my league, so I was shocked when she agreed to go out with me. But the more we got to know one another, the more I fell in love. She was really passionate about life and serving other people. I adore her even more because of the warmth and caring she showed to everyone. It was wonderful to be married to her, and I always thought our union was excellent rather than merely mediocre. I took care to maintain my integrity as a husband. I ate well and looked after myself. Our key occasions and anniversaries are always in my memory. I actually paid attention and listened when she spoke to me. She was important to me, so I became really interested in her life, but I also gave her space and avoided being overly needy or clinging. I cleaned and did my share of the household chores. As much as she did, too. As far as I could tell, our time in bed appeared wonderful as well. I always let her know how much I valued her and loved her in the manner that a spouse should. Even after we were married, I tried to continue dating her. Without a doubt, I never took her for granted. I'm still unsure exactly what went wrong, though, in spite of everything. I've often questioned whether there was anything more I could have done. Was I overdoing it? Did she believe I was easily won over? Has she stopped respecting me? It's hard to determine what transpired. Not that our marriage was perfect, mind you. We did argue sometimes, but never over anything important. My closest friend's breakup with his fiancée was the catalyst for the issue. He was unhappy and took it quite hard. After I spoke with him about it, my wife asked if it would be okay if they went out for coffee so that she could chat to him, and offer a woman's viewpoint. I assured her that I was fine with it. She was, after all, buddies with my best buddy. Because he was often around me, he and his girlfriend would frequently hang out, and we would go on couples trips together. I didn't give it much thought at the time because their friendship seemed perfectly acceptable. Though it was only in passing, I do recall him praising my wife's appearance when we first started dating and were married. No offensive jokes or anything of the kind were spoken. I didn't see anything wrong with my wife's comment that he was attractive at any moment. I still don't see any indications that they may be more than just friends, even now that I think about it. Upon her return from the coffee gathering, my wife appeared rather strange. She thought he deserved more and was furious at his former partner. I attempted to comfort her by telling her that he's still young and will get better, but she looked genuinely offended by that. She said he needed more time, that any female who ends up with him is really lucky, and that his ex-girlfriend was stupid for having broken up with him. The primary takeaway from the conversation, which I may not have remembered in detail, was that my wife was being evasive and providing little details. But at the time, it didn't seem odd to me. Since he's my friend, I assumed she was simply trying to protect him, and that's exactly how I would have responded too. My wife's conduct became strange after that night. Despite not acting in an obviously suspicious manner, she started to be evasive about her intentions. She would provide vague explanations when she stated she was going to run an errand or meet a friend. She hadn't given me any cause to question her, and I'm not a controlling person. I thus didn't think much of it at the moment. I didn't think it was odd. My friend was acting strangely as well, but I put it down to his recent split and depressive state. It was strange that he kept declining my invitations to hang out. He just stated that he was busy without providing a reason. He appeared different when we did meet, and I saw less and less of him overall. It's difficult to put into words, but he didn't appear to be as at ease as previously. He sent me a message one day requesting a visit to his home, stating he wanted to discuss and work through certain problems. I headed over there with no suspicions. He answered the door when I knocked. I attempted to engage him in some light-hearted banter and jokes, but he gave me the cold shoulder. After that, he motioned for me to enter the living area, where I saw my wife seated on his couch. I may not have completely understood what was happening at the time, but a feeling of dread began to settle over me. She burst into tears the moment I stepped in, and he quickly informed me that there was no simple way to express their love and want to be together. I was so taken aback that I felt as though I wasn't even there. They both attempted to apologize, stating they still loved me and were sorry for what had happened when I eventually began to compose myself. They said it was not anything they had planned, but rather an emotional event that had transpired. Even though they realized they were in error, they couldn't help but be in love. Nothing physical had happened between them, they had vowed. To be honest, I'm not sure if that's true or not, and I'm not sure it really matters anymore. And that's our current situation. Ever since that day, I've gotten a lot of texts from both of them apologizing. Although my wife has been contacting me less frequently and asking how I'm doing, I mainly disregard her messages now, even though she assures me that she still loves me. I didn't bother to find out where she was heading when she made the decision to leave our home. Subsequently, one of my friends disclosed that she promptly moved in with my former acquaintance upon her departure. It was only a few months before that. She came by the house a few days ago to pick up some stuff. She requested to speak with me briefly, even though I made an effort to avoid her. Then she revealed to me that she is attempting to have a child with my ex-friend. She wanted to let me know so that we could deal with it throughout our divorce. She believed that since I deserved to know, it was crucial that she inform me directly. Hearing how fast she's moving on hurt a lot. She wanted to wait until she reached 30, even though we had plans to have children together. I have to watch him now, as he will be the one to father her children. I'm here to ask for any guidance you may have. I'm not sure how to handle her becoming pregnant. I'm so envious of him since he's living the life I always want with her, and I feel like it will be a never-ending source of sorrow once it occurs. I also know that this pregnancy truly marks the end of our relationship. After then, there would be no possibility of reconciliation. I considered recommending therapy. But since she's so intent on being with him, I doubt she'd be interested. I'm not sure how to handle any of this either. I'm at a loss as to how I missed the fact that they both did this. I don't know why she left when everything seemed good between us. I'm starting to doubt everything. You feel as like nothing is genuine and life is a giant deception if you can't trust your closest friend, your wife, or even a marriage you fought so hard to build. Sometimes life can be so unjust. Surprisingly, I've been feeling better these last 3 days since my wife departed. I'm beginning to consider what lies ahead. Although there isn't much to report, I wanted to let you all know about a few things. I've made the decision to get in touch with my ex-friend to find out how she feels about the split. I feel like I should try, even if I'm not sure if I'll learn anything valuable. I spoke with one lawyer, but I really need to start looking for a reputable one. I'll start looking more diligently next week. Thankfully, I have some suggestions to think about from my friends and family. I'm quite confident I'll start counseling soon, but I'm not sure when. I am aware that I need professional assistance to get through this since my mental health is not excellent right now. I'm considering writing to my former pal and wife. Many of you inquired as to why, upon learning of their affair, I didn't confront him. It disturbed me because I realized that, despite their seeming indifference, I never told them how much they wounded me. Many of you offered advice on how to handle the circumstance. In order to make the house more comfortable until I can move out, I'm going to make a few improvements around it. I'll also keep myself occupied. But up until now, the most difficult part has been the evenings when I'm alone myself and everything is silent, like they are right now. Update: many of you advised me to get in touch with my friend's ex-girlfriend, let's call her EF for convenience, to find out whether she had any information on his extramarital affair with my wife. I did try to get in touch with her, but she only validated EF's account of why they broke up. I inquired whether she saw anything odd, or suspected that, prior to their breakup, he was seeing someone else. She said that she had no cause for concern. She appeared genuinely surprised that they ended up together, therefore I trust her, because I don't think she has any grounds for lying to me. I spoke about drafting a letter to my wife and EF in my last article, as a way to get closure. I took the counsel of many of you, who strongly discouraged me against doing it. The letter was written for me, but I never sent it. You folks were probably right that they wouldn't give a damn anyhow, thus there really wasn't much need in delivering it. I ultimately decided on an attorney to represent me a few weeks ago. I trusted him to safeguard my interests and make sure the divorce was settled fairly because he came highly recommended to me. I formally filed for divorce last week. Even though it was a difficult day, I knew it was required. I know it's not possible, but there's still a part of me that fantasizes about her returning and owning up to her error. My existence cannot be based on an unfulfilled fantasy. Prior to actually filing for divorce, I felt a little better, but that feeling vanished after I filed, and I've started to feel even more down. I thought about getting personal therapy as you folks recommended, but I concluded now isn't the right time. Fortunately, I started a new project at work, and I've been keeping busy, which helps with the adjustments I've made in my life. As absurd as it may seem, there is a part of me that isn't particularly interested in becoming better. This melancholy, in my opinion, is normal when a marriage is ending. Despite the wishes of many of you, I chose not to pursue the alienation of affection litigation. My lawyer clarified that there are no assurances and that it won't be simple. Furthermore, even if I were to win, nothing would change because I don't care about the money. Right now, I just want to get this over with as quickly as possible so I can move on and start anew. The only other noteworthy thing is that my wife phoned me to beg to meet and have a conversation after receiving her documents. Neither have I replied, and I doubt that I will. I doubt she could tell me anything I would be interested in hearing, and I don't think there is anything else for us to say to each other. As far as my activities go, I've been jogging more, reading, experimenting with yoga, and practicing meditation. I wasn't really into meditation, but yoga was nice. I've been occupied at work, which is a useful diversion. I thought about studying French, but I'll put it on hold for the time being because I have other side tasks to do. I also started fishing again. Just trying to keep myself busy so my thoughts don't wander too much while I'm alone myself. In terms of house improvements, I got rid of a lot of mementos that brought back memories of my wife. Unexpectedly, having a body cushion on my bed allowed me to unwind more. I may return to the master bedroom soon, but for now I'm staying in the guest room. I still have problems falling asleep, so it doesn't really matter at this point. That's all there is. to it. I've been reading more about failed relationships, and seeing a YouTube video with recommendations from sites has given me some excellent information. According to the guy in the video, you should definitely move on from someone soon if you've broken up with them. It caused me to reconsider how I saw my wife. Though if she could do all of this, perhaps she wasn't the one after all. He also offered some excellent insights on memory, and coming to terms with the fact that a loved one is only a memory. That's all there is to it for now. It's not the most exciting or joyful update, but that's just life, I suppose.